The Vikings are famous for being fierce seafarers and warriors who sparked imaginations across the world. Their reputation as brutal raiders and skilled warriors has been cemented in history and legend. Immortalized in sagas and films, they are often depicted as unstoppable and ruthless fighters. Yet, beyond their fearsome image lies a different story, one of survival in harsh conditions. The Vikings didn't just conquer lands, they mastered the unforgiving environments they lived in. Their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and tools were key to their success and survival. In the vast and unforgiving landscapes of Scandinavia, where winters were long, cold, and dark, survival was not a given. It required an intimate understanding of nature, an ability to adapt, and most importantly, the right tools. Tools that allowed the Vikings to hunt, gather, and thrive in environments where many other civilizations might have failed. Whether it was gathering food from dense forests, hunting in harsh climates, or gathering resources from the sea, the Viking way of life depended on these simple yet effective tools. The Vikings didn't have the conveniences we take for granted today. There were no supermarkets or easy access to resources. Instead, everything, food, shelter, fire, had to be gathered, hunted, or crafted from scratch. This is where the essential tools they used for hunting and gathering come into play. These tools were not just about getting by. They were the foundation of Viking survival. They were the difference between life and death. In this video, we'll dive into 5 survival tools the Vikings used for hunting and gathering. These tools were more than just objects. They were indispensable for their daily survival. Whether it was hunting large game in the wild, fishing in the cold waters, or gathering plants from the forests and fields, each tool had its own specialized role. Understanding these tools gives us a glimpse into the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the Viking people. It's a window into a world where survival was a constant struggle, and these tools were their lifeline. The Viking axe is perhaps the most iconic tool associated with the Viking people, and for good reason. When we think of Vikings, the image of a warrior brandishing a large, brutal axe in battle is almost inseparable from their reputation. But the Viking axe wasn't just a weapon of war, it was a multifaceted tool that played a central role in the daily survival of the Vikings. Without it, life in the harsh Scandinavian environment would have been far more difficult, if not impossible. This tool was not only essential for hunting and gathering, but was also crucial in building the very structures that allowed the Vikings to thrive in their cold, unforgiving world. The Vikings lived in an environment that was covered with dense forests, where trees were plentiful, but resources were scarce. The harsh winters made it imperative to prepare well in advance, and the ability to gather firewood, build shelter, and create tools was a matter of survival. Timber was one of the Vikings' most important resources. It was used for everything from heating their homes and crafting tools to building the famous Viking longships that enabled their seafaring ways. Without access to timber, the Vikings would have struggled to stay warm, to protect themselves from the elements, and to hunt and fish effectively. Enter the Viking axe. Its shape, size, and utility were designed to make the most out of the environment around them. The large, broad blade of the Viking axe allowed it to chop down trees with minimal effort. The Vikings' axes were often double-edged, which increased their efficiency, allowing them to fell trees faster and with fewer strikes. The handle was long enough to give the user leverage, which made it easier to cut through thick, sturdy trunks. This design was particularly useful for clearing forests, making the surrounding land more accessible and ready for habitation or farming. But it wasn't just about cutting down trees for firewood or shelter. These axes were also used to build boats. The Vikings' longships were essential to their survival and expansion, and without their axes, they wouldn't have had the ability to craft the ships that would carry them across oceans and rivers to new lands. But the Viking axe wasn't just about cutting down trees. It also had a role in the process of hunting. When hunting large game like elk or bears, the Vikings needed to clear paths through thick forests, where visibility was often poor. The axe was used to create clearings and to build shelters or temporary camps for the hunters. Once a large game was taken down, the axe became indispensable for skinning the animal, breaking apart the carcass, and using every part of it. From clothing to tools, the Vikings were able to use the resources of a single animal to their full advantage, and the axe played a pivotal role in this process. The same tool that helped fell trees also helped harvest and process food. Axes were also essential for the creation of other tools. Once the Vikings had the necessary wood, they could craft everything from spears to shields to bows and arrows. The axe was a critical tool for shaping wood, carving it into the desired shapes to create other weapons or everyday implements. It's important to note that the Viking axe wasn't a single type of tool. It had many variations, each suited to a particular task. For example, the smaller, lighter axes were used for more detailed work, such as crafting tools and weapons. The larger axes, with their heavy, wide blades, were perfect for cutting down trees and preparing wood for larger projects. When it came to gathering resources in nature, the axe was equally important. It was used to harvest bark for making ropes, containers, or even clothing. Wood was also gathered for crafting utensils, such as bowls, spoons, and combs, items necessary for everyday Viking life. The Vikings' connection to the land wasn't just about survival. It was also about using nature to create the tools, comforts, and structures they needed to thrive. The Viking axe was also uniquely suited to combat. While we often think of the axe as a weapon used in battle, its ability to chop down trees and gather materials made it a key part of Viking survival tactics. When raiding other lands, the axe served as both a weapon and a tool for quick expeditions. The Vikings were known for their ability to travel light and fast, and they used their axes to quickly dismantle structures or chop through obstacles in their way. The dual purpose of the Viking axe as both weapon and utility tool made it a central part of Viking life, both in times of peace and war. The design of the Viking axe reflected the Viking mindset, efficient, durable, and adaptable to the environment. The axe head was typically made of iron or steel, which ensured its durability and strength. The handle was often made of sturdy wood, usually ash or hickory, which provided a solid grip even in the most slippery conditions. Because axes were so critical to Viking survival, they were meticulously maintained. Viking blacksmiths would regularly forge new axe heads, replacing old or damaged ones, to ensure that the tools stayed sharp and reliable. The handle would often be carefully crafted and sometimes adorned with decorations, reflecting the craftsmanship that went into these seemingly utilitarian objects. In essence, the Viking axe was the backbone of their survival. It was a tool of tremendous versatility that allowed the Vikings to meet the challenges of their environment head-on. It was used for hunting, gathering, building, and even in times of warfare. Without the axe, the Vikings wouldn't have been able to construct the boats that helped them raid and trade across vast distances. They wouldn't have been able to gather the resources they needed to survive the long winters. The Viking axe was the key to their ability to adapt, thrive, and conquer in one of the most challenging regions in the world. When it comes to Viking survival, one tool stands out as particularly versatile and indispensable: the spear. The Viking spear, like the axe, was a multifaceted weapon and tool, but it played a central role not just in warfare, but in hunting and gathering as well. The spear's long shaft and sharp iron tip made it an effective weapon in battle, but it also gave the Vikings an edge when it came to hunting large game and even fishing. This dual-purpose tool was essential for Viking survival and demonstrated the practicality and efficiency that defined Viking ingenuity. The spear was, in many ways, the perfect tool for a hunter in the forests and fields of Scandinavia. For the Vikings, hunting was not just a pastime. It was a vital means of acquiring food. While they were skilled in trapping and ambushing, the spear allowed them to take down larger prey, such as elk, boar, and reindeer, which roamed the forests and grasslands. The long shaft of the spear gave the hunter considerable reach, allowing them to strike from a distance without getting too close to dangerous animals. In many cases, the spear was used to throw at prey, though it was also useful for close-quarters thrusting when the hunter had to engage with the animal more directly. In battle, the spear was one of the primary weapons wielded by Viking warriors. Its length and versatility made it an ideal weapon for combat, long enough to be effective against cavalry or in tight formations, but also agile enough for individual duels. However, the spear's role in Viking survival extended far beyond the battlefield. Vikings didn't just hunt with spears, they fished with them as well. Fishing was a key part of Viking life, especially along the coasts of Scandinavia, where the sea provided a rich source of food. The Viking spear was adapted for this purpose by adding barbed tips, which helped catch fish in the shallow coastal waters or even deeper in the sea. Fishing spears were designed to have multiple sharp points, making it easier to impale fish and prevent them from escaping. Fishing wasn't just for the Viking elite or warriors. It was a communal activity that was vital for feeding entire villages during the summer and winter months alike. Without a reliable tool like the spear, this form of subsistence fishing would have been incredibly difficult, if not impossible. The Viking spear was built for durability. The shaft was often made from sturdy wood, such as ash, which could withstand the strain of a thrown weapon or being struck against hard surfaces. The metal head, typically forged from iron or steel, was sharpened to a fine point and designed to be durable enough for both combat and hunting. Some spearheads were wider and designed for hunting larger animals, while others were narrower and more suited for fishing. This adaptability made the Viking spear a key element of Viking survival, whether in the dense forests hunting game or out on the open water catching fish. What sets the Viking spear apart from other hunting tools is its incredible simplicity and practicality. Unlike the more elaborate bows and arrows which required complex construction and maintenance, the spear was easy to manufacture and maintain. It didn't require much more than a straight shaft, a metal head, and a good set of hands to craft. The Vikings were expert blacksmiths, capable of producing high-quality spearheads, and many Viking families would have at least one spear in their household, if not several. Spears weren't just used for hunting and gathering. They were also an important part of Viking trade. The Vikings were known for their far-reaching trade networks, which stretched from the British Isles to the Middle East. Spears, along with other weapons and tools, were valuable trade items, and they were often exchanged for goods like furs, spices, or silver. This gave the spear even more importance within Viking society, not only as a tool of survival, but also as a means of building relationships and securing resources from distant lands. Beyond the functional aspects of the spear, it also held cultural significance. The act of hunting with a spear was often tied to Viking rituals and beliefs. In Viking culture, hunting wasn't just about acquiring food, it was a way to connect with nature and the gods. The Viking god, Odin, was often associated with hunting and battle, and many Viking warriors considered themselves to be following in the footsteps of Odin when they wielded their spears. Hunting with a spear, therefore, wasn't just about the practical necessity of acquiring food. It was also a spiritual practice, binding the Vikings to their mythological past. The spear's role in Viking life extended beyond survival and ritual. It was a symbol of status and power. While axes and swords were often associated with Viking warriors and their prowess in battle, the spear was the weapon of choice for many common Vikings, farmers, hunters, and traders alike. It was a tool of the everyday Viking, just as essential as the axe for gathering resources and protecting their homes. The simplicity and effectiveness of the spear made it a democratic weapon. It wasn't reserved only for the elite warriors, but was available to nearly every Viking in the community. In short, the Viking spear was indispensable for survival. Its versatility made it perfect for hunting large game, fishing, and combat, while its simplicity made it easy to create and maintain. Whether on land or at sea, the spear was a constant companion for the Vikings, helping them to gather food, defend their homes, and thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. While the axe and spear were essential for large-scale hunting and survival, the knife may well have been the most ubiquitous tool in Viking daily life. Small yet mighty, the Viking knife was an indispensable tool that served many roles, much more than just a weapon. In a world where every tool had multiple uses, the knife was vital for everything from butchering animals to crafting tools, preparing food, and even personal grooming. Unlike the larger, more specialized weapons, the knife was something that could be carried at all times, making it one of the most important tools a Viking would have in their belt. The design of the Viking knife was simple, but its effectiveness came from its practicality. The blade was typically around 4 to 6 inches long, made from high-quality iron or steel, and often tapered to a sharp point. Its simplicity made it a versatile tool that could be used for a wide range of tasks. Whether for cutting rope, skinning animals, or preparing food, the knife's sharp edge and compact design made it ideal for both delicate tasks and more rugged applications. When it came to hunting, the Viking knife played a crucial role in the processing of game. After a successful hunt, the knife was used to skin the animal, remove its organs, and divide the meat into manageable pieces. The sharp, sturdy blade was perfect for slicing through tough hides and cutting through sinew and bone. Butchering an animal wasn't just about collecting food. It was about maximizing every part of the animal for use. The Viking knife was used to separate the hide from the meat, which could then be used for clothing, tents, or other tools. Bones and sinew were often turned into needles, thread, or even weapons, and the knife was essential for harvesting these materials. In addition to hunting and butchering, the knife was vital for the gathering of resources. Foraging for wild plants, herbs, and berries was an important aspect of Viking survival, especially when the hunting season was less fruitful. The knife was used to cut and prepare plant-based foods, such as herbs for medicinal use or berries to be dried and preserved. Vikings also used their knives to carve wooden tools, craft utensils, and create personal items like combs or containers. The knife was a multi-purpose tool that, in many ways, helped tie together the Vikings' reliance on both hunting and gathering. The Viking knife was not just a tool, it was an essential part of Viking craftsmanship. Skilled blacksmiths forged knives for every purpose, whether for cooking, skinning, or making tools. Each knife would often be individually crafted to meet the specific needs of the owner. The handles were typically made from wood, bone, or antler, which made them easy to grip and often featured intricate designs or carvings, reflecting the Vikings' appreciation for craftsmanship in even their most utilitarian items. The knife's simplicity didn't take away from its durability either. Viking knives were built to last, with blades that were regularly sharpened and handles that were often reinforced for long-term use. The knife also served a more personal purpose. It was an everyday tool carried by Vikings wherever they went, on raids, while hunting, or even just in daily life. Every Viking needed a knife, whether they were a warrior, a farmer, or a craftsman. It was just as essential to everyday life as the spear or axe, and it was with a knife that many basic needs were met. From preparing meals to making the tools that were used for survival, the knife was a tool that tied all aspects of Viking life together. Knives were also integral to Viking trade. Due to their simplicity, knives were often used as valuable trading items in Viking exchanges, just like spears and axes. Their ease of production and utility made them an attractive commodity for bartering. Viking traders traveled far and wide, from the British Isles to the Middle East, and knives were often exchanged for goods such as furs, spices, and precious metals. In this way, the knife helped connect Viking culture to the larger world, providing both survival and economic benefits. Furthermore, knives had a symbolic importance in Viking culture. Many Viking sagas mention the use of knives in ceremonial or ritual contexts. In some cases, knives were used in Viking burial practices, either as part of grave goods or in the preparation of offerings. The craftsmanship and personal significance of a Viking knife meant that it could be a highly treasured possession, passed down through generations as both a practical tool and a family heirloom. In short, the Viking knife was one of the most essential, versatile tools in their survival kit. Whether used for hunting, gathering, crafting, or personal tasks, it was a tool that could handle almost any challenge. Its durability, simplicity, and practicality made it a constant companion for Vikings throughout their daily lives. More than just a weapon or tool, the Viking knife was a symbol of the resourcefulness and self-sufficiency that defined Viking society. While axes, spears, and knives were crucial for hunting on land, the harpoon was the Vikings' tool for conquering the sea, one of their most vital sources of food. The harpoon was not just a weapon, it was a specialized tool used primarily for hunting marine life, such as fish, seals, and even whales. Considering the Vikings' deep connection to the sea and the importance of fishing in their diet, the harpoon was an indispensable tool for their survival, enabling them to take full advantage of the rich waters that surrounded their lands. The harpoon, in its various forms, was uniquely suited to the demands of Viking life along the coasts and in the fjords. Fishing was a way of life for the Vikings, especially for coastal communities, where fishing would have been the most reliable source of protein. Fish such as herring, cod, and salmon were staples in the Viking diet. The harpoon's primary function was to help Vikings catch these fish, especially the larger, more elusive varieties that could not be easily caught with a net or hook. The harpoon was designed with a long, sturdy shaft and a sharp, barbed head, allowing the Vikings to strike fish from a distance. This design was particularly useful in colder waters, where fishing from a boat or on ice would require both precision and strength. One of the remarkable features of the Viking harpoon was its design, which was optimized for securing large prey in deep water. The harpoon head was often triangular or barbed, making it difficult for the captured fish or mammal to escape once impaled. This feature was especially useful when hunting larger marine animals, like seals or whales. The Vikings could throw the harpoon from the shore or from a boat, ensuring that the animal would not break free. The barbed head would often have a mechanism, such as a rope or line attached, that would allow the hunter to pull the prey toward the boat or shore after it was struck, ensuring a successful catch. The combination of a sharp, durable metal head and the long, flexible shaft gave the Vikings a distinct advantage in hunting marine life. The use of the harpoon for hunting seals and whales was a critical part of Viking survival in the Arctic and subarctic regions, where animal products from the sea provided a significant portion of the diet. In addition to meat, the fat and blubber from marine animals were valuable commodities. The fat could be rendered for use in cooking or for creating oil lamps, while the blubber was an essential source of calories and nutrients, especially during the long winters. The Viking harpoon, therefore, not only helped secure food for the Vikings, but it also ensured that they had the necessary resources to survive the harsh, dark months. The harpoon was also indispensable for hunting larger sea mammals such as whales, which were particularly important to Viking communities in coastal areas like Greenland or Iceland. The Viking longboats, known for their speed and agility, were ideal for harpoon hunting, allowing Viking fishermen to chase down and capture larger marine prey. Whales, seals, and other large mammals provided an abundance of resources: meat for food, fat for fuel, and even bones that could be used for tools or weapons. The harpoon was essential for capturing these massive animals, and without it, the Vikings would have struggled to access these valuable resources. Harpoons were not limited to just fishing. The Vikings also used harpoons in warfare. Viking raiders sometimes used harpoons as a means of catching enemy warriors or damaging ships. The flexibility of the harpoon design allowed it to serve both as a hunting tool and as a weapon. It could be thrown to disable an enemy ship or even capture an individual during battle. This versatility made the harpoon a symbol of Viking adaptability, showcasing how one tool could serve multiple functions, both in everyday life and during warfare. The material construction of the Viking harpoon is worth noting as well. The shaft was often made from strong wood, such as ash or oak, to provide durability and flexibility, while the head was forged from metal, usually iron or steel, to ensure it could pierce tough skin and muscle. The Vikings were known for their exceptional blacksmithing skills, and harpoons were often crafted with great care and attention to detail, ensuring that they were both functional and effective. The heads of harpoons were often adorned with intricate carvings or patterns, reflecting the artistry of Viking craftsmanship even in their most utilitarian tools. In terms of usage, the harpoon required skill and precision. Hunting large marine mammals was not a simple task. It demanded knowledge of the ocean, the behavior of the animals, and the perfect timing to launch the harpoon. Vikings were master hunters, and their relationship with the sea was one of respect and necessity. Harpoon hunting required collaboration, often with multiple people involved in a single hunt. Whether they were fishing in the shallows or hunting seals off the coast, the Viking harpoon was a tool that ensured they could sustain their communities year-round, even in the harshest of climates. The harpoon's role extended beyond the mere act of hunting. It was a tool tied deeply to Viking culture and the importance of the sea in their worldview. The sea was both a provider and a source of danger, and tools like the harpoon allowed the Vikings to exploit its bounty while managing its risks. The harpoon was more than just an item for survival. It was a key part of Viking identity, a symbol of their resilience and connection to nature. While the axe, spear, and harpoon played central roles in Viking survival, the sickle was one of the quieter yet equally essential tools that allowed the Vikings to gather food and resources from the land. Used primarily for harvesting plant-based foods, the sickle was an indispensable tool in the Viking toolkit. It was a vital instrument for collecting wild grains, herbs, and other crops, making it a key component of the Viking diet, especially during the growing seasons. The sickle's curved blade, designed for cutting grasses and grains, was perfectly suited to the environment the Vikings lived in, allowing them to harvest food quickly and efficiently. The role of the sickle in Viking agriculture and gathering cannot be overstated. While hunting and fishing were critical sources of protein, the Vikings also relied heavily on plant-based foods for sustenance. Grains like barley, oats, and rye were cultivated in the fertile areas of Scandinavia, and the sickle was used to harvest these crops. During the short summer months, the Vikings would gather as much grain as possible, which would then be dried and stored for the long winter months. The sickle's curved blade made it easier to cut through dense stalks of wheat or barley, making the harvesting process far more efficient than other tools. In addition to grains, the sickle was used for harvesting a wide variety of wild plants and herbs. The Viking diet wasn't limited to cultivated crops. Wild plants, berries, and herbs played an important role in their nutrition. Wild garlic, berries, and medicinal plants were gathered using sickles, which allowed Vikings to prepare natural remedies for ailments, create dyes for clothing, or even add flavor to their meals. For the Vikings, being able to gather these wild plants meant having access to more varied food sources and medicines in a time when medical knowledge was rudimentary at best. The sickle was also an essential tool for foraging, a practice that went hand in hand with hunting and fishing. In a world where food scarcity could be a very real concern, the ability to gather wild foods from the land was crucial to ensuring the survival of Viking communities, especially in the long, cold months when hunting and fishing weren't as fruitful. Foraging for herbs and vegetables would supplement the Vikings' meat-based diet, providing important nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. The sickle made it easier for them to efficiently gather and process these wild foods. The design of the Viking sickle was incredibly practical. The blade was typically curved and made from high-quality steel, allowing it to cut through thick plant stalks with ease. The handle, often made of wood or bone, was ergonomically designed for a firm grip. This curved blade was ideal for cutting grasses, which would have been used for everything from making mats and ropes to preparing food for livestock. The sickle's shape allowed for smooth, sweeping motions that could clear large areas of vegetation at once, making it much more efficient than other cutting tools. For the Vikings, it wasn't just about harvesting food. It was about maximizing the resources around them. In addition to harvesting grain, the sickle was used to gather materials for other practical purposes. For example, the Vikings would use the sickle to harvest reed and grasses, which were then used to make thatched roofs for their homes, baskets for carrying goods, and ropes for various purposes. This makes the sickle more than just an agricultural tool. It was also a crafting tool. It allowed the Vikings to gather materials that could be turned into essential items for daily life. Interestingly, the sickle's use went beyond mere survival and subsistence. It also had cultural significance in Viking society. In many ancient cultures, harvesting grain and other crops was often linked with fertility, and the act of gathering food from the land was seen as a sacred and vital part of life. The Vikings, who had a deeply ingrained connection to nature, would have viewed the sickle as a tool that connected them to the land in both a practical and spiritual sense. The seasonal rhythm of planting, growing, and harvesting crops was essential to Viking life, and tools like the sickle marked the changing of the seasons. It was a symbol of the agricultural cycle that dictated their lives, providing them with both food and stability. The sickle was also vital for the preservation of food. After harvesting crops and plants, Vikings would often need to dry or store their food for the winter. The sickle made the harvesting process more efficient, meaning more food could be gathered and preserved during the brief summer months, ensuring that the community would have enough to eat during the long, dark winters. This kind of foresight and resourcefulness was key to Viking survival, as winter could last for months, making food scarce and often hard to come by. Furthermore, the sickle played an essential role in the Viking economy. As the Vikings began to expand their territory through trade, they needed to supply not just their own people but also those they traded with. Agricultural products like grains and herbs were often bartered with other tribes or peoples. The ability to harvest crops efficiently, using tools like the sickle, meant that the Vikings could produce surplus food for trade. In this way, the sickle wasn't just a tool for survival, it was also an economic tool, contributing to the Vikings' ability to trade and build their reputation as traders, raiders, and settlers. In the broader context of Viking life, the sickle was a reminder that survival was not only about hunting and fighting. It was about understanding the land, the plants, and the seasons. The sickle allowed the Vikings to be self-sufficient, drawing from the land as much as possible to ensure that they could weather the harsh winters. It may not have been as glamorous or dramatic as the axe or spear, but the sickle was just as essential to Viking survival, providing them with food, materials, and economic power. As we've explored throughout this video, the Viking tools for hunting and gathering were not only essential for their survival, they were critical to their ability to thrive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Each tool, from the mighty axe to the delicate sickle, served a purpose that went far beyond simple functionality. These tools were what allowed the Vikings to adapt, survive, and build a society that stretched from the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the warm shores of the Mediterranean. Without them, their raids would have been impossible, their settlements unsustainable, and their culture likely much less prosperous. The Viking axe, with its power to fell trees, build boats, and clear paths through dense forests, was vital for both the creation of shelter and the tools that would carry them to far-flung shores. The spear, with its versatility as a weapon of both war and hunting, enabled the Vikings to tackle large game and protect themselves from threats, whether on land or at sea. The knife, small yet powerful, was an everyday tool that served countless purposes, from food preparation to personal defense. The harpoon, forged for the specific task of hunting marine life, allowed the Vikings to exploit the oceans, providing them with fish, seals, and even whales that sustained their coastal communities. Lastly, the sickle, with its curved blade, was indispensable for gathering wild grains, herbs, and other resources that helped the Vikings survive during long winters when other food sources were scarce. Looking at these tools in context, it's clear that the Vikings were not just fierce warriors. They were resourceful, practical, and adaptable. They relied on their environment, but more importantly, they mastered it, using these tools to secure their place in a world that was often unforgiving. These tools weren't just for survival, they were for making life possible in a landscape that could have easily driven others to despair. Their ability to craft, modify, and use tools effectively ensured their long-lasting legacy. But beyond their practical uses, these tools also reflect the Viking mindset, one of ingenuity, resilience, and an unwavering connection to the land and sea. They were tools born out of necessity, but they also held deep cultural significance. From the way the Vikings worshipped nature to how they interacted with the world around them, these tools served as extensions of their identity. The harpoon wasn't just for fishing, it was a link to the sea gods. The sickle wasn't just for harvesting, it symbolized the changing seasons and the cycle of life that the Vikings revered. In the end, the Viking tools we've discussed were more than just physical objects. They were tools of survival, culture, and identity. They allowed the Vikings to not only endure but to conquer, create, and adapt. From the axe to the sickle, each tool was part of a greater strategy for survival. A strategy that combined knowledge of the environment, craftsmanship, and a deep sense of community. The Vikings, ability to use these tools effectively was one of the reasons they managed to settle across such a wide expanse of land, building a legacy that still resonates today.